Ambassador Zexathara stood at the observation deck of her diplomatic vessel, watching the blue and green world of New Geneva grow larger through the transparent aluminum windows. Her forearms moved in slow, graceful patterns as she reviewed the mission briefing one final time. This was supposed to be a simple first contact assignment. The humans had been part of the galactic community for only 50 years, and the diplomatic corps wanted a fresh assessment of their integration progress. Zexathara's species, the Veltar, had been diplomats for over 2,000 years. They had helped integrate 47 different species into the galactic community. She had personally overseen 12 first contact missions. Humans should not be difficult to understand. The communication array crackled to life. New Geneva. Control to diplomatic vessel Morningstar. Please state your approach vector and landing requirements. This is Ambassador Zexathara of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps, she responded through the translation device. Requesting permission to land. At the designated diplomatic facility, there was a pause. Ambassador, please adjust your approach to Vector 77 Alpha. You will be met by an escort at the outer marker. Zexathara found this odd. Most species simply provided landing coordinates. Why would humans need to escort a diplomatic vessel? She instructed her pilot, a reliable Kethamori named Blix, to follow the given coordinates. As they approached the outer marker, 3 sleek vessels appeared on their sensors. The ships moved with military precision, taking formation around the Morningstar. Each escort vessel was heavily armed with weapons that looked far too advanced for such a young spacefaring species. Morningstar, this is Lieutenant Commander Hayes. Welcome to New Geneva. Please maintain current speed and heading. We'll guide you to the diplomatic landing pad. Through the view screen, Zexathara could see the lead escort ship clearly. It bristled, with weapon arrays, sensor equipment, and what looked like defensive countermeasures. The pilot's voice was calm and professional, but there was an alertness to it that made her uneasy. As they descended through the atmosphere, Zexathara got her first good look at human civilization on New Geneva. What she saw confused her greatly. The cities below were beautiful, with green parks and elegant buildings, but every settlement was surrounded by defensive walls. Energy barriers shimmered around important structures. Weapon emplacements dotted the landscape like metallic flowers. Even more strange, she could see humans going about their daily lives in the cities below. They walked through markets, tended gardens, and played in parks. But every single one of them appeared to be armed. Adults carried weapons openly on their belts or across their backs. Even children seemed to have small defensive devices. Is New Geneva currently under attack? Zexathara asked Lieutenant Commander Hayes. No, ma'am. This is a normal day, came the reply. A normal day. The most heavily fortified civilization she had ever seen, and they called it normal. The diplomatic landing pad sat in the center of New Geneva's capital city. As the Morningstar touched down, Zexathara could see a welcoming committee waiting for them. At least 20 humans stood in formation on the pad. Half of them wore what appeared to be formal diplomatic clothing, while the other half were clearly soldiers in full combat armor. She stepped off her ship with her small diplomatic staff. The gravity on New Geneva was slightly heavier than she preferred, but manageable. The air was clean and smelled of growing plants and distant rain. A tall human woman with graying hair stepped forward. She wore elegant blue robes, but Zexathara noticed the outline of armor beneath the fabric and a sophisticated weapon at her side. Ambassador Zexathara, welcome to New Geneva. I am Director Sarah Chen, head of our Interspecies Relations Department. The human's smile seemed genuine and warm. We are honored by your visit. Zexathara performed the traditional Veltar greeting, her forearms moving in a complex pattern. The honor is mine, Director Chen. I look forward to learning more about human culture and society. Excellent. We have prepared quarters for you and your staff in the diplomatic district. I hope you'll find them comfortable. Director Chen gestured toward a group of vehicles waiting nearby. Like everything else Zexathara had seen, the vehicles were elegant, but obviously armored and armed. As they traveled through the city, Zexathara observed human society more closely. The people seemed happy and relaxed. Children played in parks while their parents watched from benches. Merchants sold goods from colorful stalls. Artists displayed their work on street corners. It was a normal, thriving civilization, but every adult was armed, not just with simple weapons, but with sophisticated energy rifles, plasma sidearms, and devices she didn't recognize. The children carried what looked like defensive shields and emergency communicators. Even the elderly humans she saw had weapons appropriate for their physical capabilities. "Director Chen," Zexthara said carefully, "I notice that your people seem very well prepared for combat. Is New Geneva facing some kind of threat?" Director Chen's expression didn't change, but Zexthara sensed something shift in the humans' demeanor. "We believe in being prepared, Ambassador. It's part of our culture." "Prepared for what?" "Whatever might come," Director Chen replied simply. They arrived at the diplomatic quarters, a beautiful complex of buildings surrounded by gardens. Zexthara noticed that even the gardens had defensive positions built into them, cleverly disguised as artistic features. The buildings themselves were clearly designed to serve as fortresses if needed. Her quarters were spacious and comfortable, with furniture adjusted for her physiology. Large windows provided a view of the city and the mountains beyond. Through those windows she could see more defensive installations on the mountainsides. That evening, Director Chen hosted a welcome dinner for Zexthara and her staff. The food was excellent and the humans were gracious hosts. The conversation flowed easily, covering topics like art, science, and philosophy. The humans were intelligent, curious, and surprisingly well-informed about galactic affairs. But Zexthara couldn't shake her unease. Even at this formal dinner, every human was armed. The servers carried weapons alongside their food trays. The musicians performing for entertainment had rifle cases next to their instruments. The children playing in the courtyard outside wore protective gear as naturally as other species might wear decorative jewelry. "I must ask," Zexthara said during a pause in conversation, "your people seem very focused on military preparedness. Most species in the galactic community moved beyond such concerns centuries ago. We have the Galactic Peace Accords, the Mutual Defense Treaty. What are you preparing to fight?" The table fell silent. The humans exchanged glances that seemed to communicate something she couldn't understand. Director Chen set down her glass, slowly. "Ambassador, how much do you know about human history?" Director Chen asked. "The standard briefing materials. Your species achieved spaceflight approximately 300 years ago. You've been expanding across this sector ever since. 50 years ago, you made contact with the galactic community and have been integrating successfully. And what do those briefing materials say about our homeworld?" Zexthara consulted her memory. "Earth is listed as uninhabitable. I assumed there was some kind of environmental disaster." The silence stretched longer. Finally, Director Chen spoke again. "There was a disaster, Ambassador, but not the kind you're thinking of." "What kind, then?" "The kind we hope never to see again," Director Chen said quietly. "The kind we train every day to prevent from happening to others." "I don't understand." Director Chen stood and walked to the large window overlooking the city. The lights of New Geneva sparkled below them like stars. "Earth was our cradle, Ambassador. 4 billion years of evolution led to our species there. It was a beautiful world full of life and wonder. We had oceans and forests, mountains and plains. We had art and music and literature spanning thousands of years of civilization. What happened to it?" "We lost it," Director Chen said simply. "All of it. Every person who couldn't evacuate. Every animal. Every plant. Every mountain and ocean. Gone." "Lost it to what?" Director Chen turned back to face her. "To something that the galaxy isn't ready to know about yet, Ambassador. To something that we hope the galaxy will never have to know about." Zexthara felt a chill run through her body. In all her years as a diplomat, she had never heard a human speak with such quiet intensity. "Are you saying there's some threat that the Galactic Council doesn't know about?" "I'm saying there are some things that are better left unspoken," Director Chen replied. "Some knowledge that brings danger just by existing in someone's mind." "But surely," Ambassador, Director Chen interrupted gently, you asked why humans are so heavily armed. The answer is simple. We learned that the universe is not as safe as most species believe. We learned that there are things in the dark between stars that most civilizations never encounter. We learned that sometimes being prepared for war is the only way to preserve peace. Zexathara stared at the human woman. You're saying that all of this, she gestured toward the city, the weapons, the fortifications, is to protect against something specific? Not just to protect ourselves, Director Chen said. To protect everyone. The dinner ended shortly, after that, with polite conversation about less troubling topics. But Zexathara couldn't stop thinking about Director Chen's words. As she prepared for sleep in her comfortable quarters, she found herself looking out at the city lights and wondering what humans knew that the rest of the galaxy didn't. She had come to New Geneva expecting to write a routine report about an over-militarized young species that needed guidance toward peaceful integration. Instead, she found herself facing questions that her diplomatic training had never prepared her for. What had happened to Earth? What were humans so afraid of? And why did their fear seem to extend to protecting species they had never met? As she finally drifted off to sleep, Zexathara made a decision. She would extend her mission on New Geneva. Whatever the humans were hiding, whatever they were preparing for, she needed to understand it. The implications were too significant to ignore. Outside her window, human sentries continued their patrol routes through the city streets, weapons ready, eyes scanning the sky for threats that other species couldn't even imagine. 3 weeks had passed since Zexathara arrived on New Geneva, and she still felt no closer to understanding the humans. Every day brought new questions. Every answer she received only led to deeper mysteries. She had requested to extend her diplomatic mission, and the Galactic Diplomatic Corps had agreed. Her official reason was to conduct a thorough cultural assessment. Her real reason was that she couldn't shake the feeling that humans were hiding something important from the galaxy. Director Chen had arranged a series of cultural tours for her. Today they were visiting the New Geneva Historical Museum, one of the largest repositories of human artifacts and records outside of their core worlds. The museum building itself told a story. Like everything else she had seen, it was beautiful but fortified. Elegant stone walls concealed defensive systems. Art installations doubled as weapons emplacements. Even the museum guards, polite and helpful as they were, carried enough firepower to stop a small army. Our history section begins here, said Dr. Marcus Webb, the museum's chief curator. He was an elderly human with kind eyes and gentle hands. But Zexathara noticed the sophisticated weapon at his side and the way his movements suggested extensive combat training. The first exhibits showed early human civilization on Earth. Cave paintings, ancient tools, the remains of early cities. Zexathara was familiar with this kind of display. Every species had similar archaeological records of their development, but as they moved through the museum, she began to notice gaps in the timeline. The exhibits jumped from early space exploration directly to colonial expansion, skipping over several decades entirely. Dr. Webb, she said, I notice there seems to be a gap in your historical record. What happened during the period between your first moon landing and your expansion to other star systems? Dr. Webb's expression grew somber. That was the war period, Ambassador. We have a separate section for those exhibits. Most visitors find the regular historical displays more comfortable. I would like to see the war period exhibits, please. Dr. Webb and Director Chen exchanged one of those meaningful looks that humans seemed to share whenever this topic arose. Are you certain, Ambassador? Some of our historical records from that time are quite disturbing. I am a trained diplomat, Dr. Webb. I have seen disturbing things before. Dr. Webb led them through a security checkpoint that scanned them with multiple energy beams. Beyond the checkpoint, the atmosphere of the museum changed completely. The walls were darker here, made of some material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The exhibits were enclosed in heavily shielded cases. The first display stopped Zexathara cold. It showed the remains of what had once been a human city on Earth. But the destruction was unlike anything she had ever seen. Buildings hadn't just been bombed or burned. They had been twisted into impossible shapes, as if reality itself had been warped around them. Metal structures were fused with organic materials in ways that violated physics. The ground was scarred with patterns that hurt to look at directly. This was Detroit, Dr. Webb said quietly. Population 8 million. This image was taken 3 days after the first attack. Attack by whom? Zexathara asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. We've never been entirely certain. Our records from that time refer to them as the devourers, though that wasn't their real name. We never learned their real name. The next display showed human military equipment from the war period. But these weren't normal weapons. The designs were strange, incorporating materials and energy patterns she didn't recognize. Some of the devices seemed to bend space around them. Others appeared to exist in more dimensions than her eyes could process. These weapons were developed specifically to fight the enemy we encountered, Dr. Webb explained. Normal military equipment was completely ineffective against them. Zexathara studied a rifle that seemed to shimmer between existing and not existing. What kind of enemy requires weapons like these? The kind that doesn't exist in the same reality we do, Director Chen said. The kind that can change the laws of physics in their immediate vicinity. The kind that treats matter and energy as suggestions rather than rules. They moved to a display showing human evacuation efforts. Massive colony ships, each capable of carrying millions of people, fleeing from Earth in desperate haste. The images showed families torn apart, possessions abandoned, entire cultures compressed into whatever digital storage could be loaded onto the evacuation vessels. How many people escaped? Zexathara asked. About 60% of Earth's population, Dr. Webb replied. 3 billion people made it to the colony ships, 5 billion didn't. The next display showed the final images transmitted from Earth before the planet went dark. Zexathara had to steady herself against the display case as she watched. The planet's surface was changing, flowing like liquid while remaining solid. The oceans were turning colors that shouldn't exist. The atmosphere itself seemed to be writhing in patterns that made her vision blur. What happened to Earth after this? We don't know, Director Chen said. All communication with the planet ceased. Long-range sensors show that something is still there, but it doesn't match any known planetary body. We've sent unmanned probes, but they either malfunction or simply disappear. Zexathara moved to the next display, which showed memorial walls covered with billions of names. The walls stretched for hundreds of meters, each name representing a person who had died during the war period. These are the people who stayed behind, Dr. Webb explained. Some volunteered to delay the enemy while others escaped. Some stayed to operate the evacuation ships until the last moment. Some simply couldn't be reached in time. And some stayed to make sure the enemy couldn't follow the colony ships, Director Chen added quietly. They reached the final display in the war period section. It showed a simple plaque with words engraved in multiple human languages. Zexathara's translation device rendered it as, "We remember those who gave everything so that others might live free from fear. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. Their vigil will not end." What does "their vigil will not end" mean? Zexathara asked. Director Chen and Dr. Webb exchanged another look. It means we learned something important during the war, Ambassador. We learned that the enemy doesn't just destroy civilizations, they're drawn to them. The more advanced a society becomes, the more attractive it becomes to them. Are you saying this enemy is still out there? We're saying that the galaxy is full of young civilizations that are developing along the same path we did, Dr. Webb replied. Civilizations that might attract the same attention we did. They left the war period exhibits and returned to the main museum. But Zexathara could barely focus on the normal historical displays. Her mind was reeling from what she had seen. That evening, she sat in her quarters reviewing her notes and trying to make sense of what she had learned. Humans had faced some kind of enemy that operated outside normal physical laws. This enemy had destroyed their homeworld and killed billions of their people. The survivors had scattered across the galaxy. But that still didn't explain why every human settlement was so heavily armed, why every civilian carried weapons, Why their children, trained for combat from an early age. She activated her communication system and sent a priority message to the Galactic Diplomatic Corps, requesting access to restricted historical archives. If humans had really faced some kind of extra-dimensional threat, there should be some record of it in the galaxy's databases. The reply came back 3 days later. The archives contained no record of any species called devourers. There was no record of Earth being attacked by extra-dimensional entities. In fact, Earth was simply listed as uninhabitable due to environmental collapse, details classified pending further investigation. Someone had altered the galactic records. Zexithara began to understand that she was dealing with something much larger than a single species military preparation. The humans weren't just protecting themselves. They were protecting information. They were keeping some knowledge away from the galactic community. But why? What could be so dangerous that even knowing about it posed a threat? She decided to approach the problem from a different angle. Instead of asking humans directly about their past, she would observe their present behavior and see what it revealed. Over the following weeks, she noticed patterns that she had initially dismissed. Human patrol schedules weren't random. They followed specific routes that provided maximum coverage of deep space approaches. Their weapon emplacements weren't just defensive. They were positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that could target threats coming from outside the star system. Most telling of all, she noticed that human settlements were always positioned to support each other. Every colony world was within communication range of at least 2 others. Every outpost was positioned to serve as an early warning system for more populated areas. Humans weren't just armed for protection. They were organized like a military force spread across the galaxy. They were standing guard against something. But guard against what? And why didn't they trust the rest of the galaxy with this information? Zexithara was beginning to suspect that the answers to these questions were more dangerous than she had imagined. The humans' secrecy wasn't just cultural preference. It was protection. The question was, protection for whom? Themselves? Or everyone else? As she prepared for sleep that night, Zexithara made another decision. She needed to see more than museums and historical displays. She needed to see how humans actually operated when they thought no one was watching. Tomorrow, she would request to observe a human military exercise. If the humans really were standing guard against something, their training would reveal what they were preparing to fight. Outside her window, the lights of New Geneva twinkled peacefully in the darkness. But now she understood that the peace was maintained by constant vigilance, by people who carried weapons and watched the stars for threats that other species couldn't imagine. The question that kept her awake was simple and terrifying. What if the humans were right to be afraid? Zexithara had been on New Geneva for 6 weeks when Director Chen finally agreed to her request to observe human military operations. The decision had taken considerable discussion among the human leadership, and Zexithara suspected she was only being allowed to see a carefully selected portion of their activities. "We'll be joining a routine patrol mission to the Kepler 442 system," Director Chen explained as they boarded a human military vessel called the Vigilant Watch. "It's a standard survey run to check for any unusual activity in the outer system." The ship itself was unlike any military vessel Zexithara had seen from other species. Most galactic military ships were designed for combat against other spacefaring civilizations, ship-to-ship battles with energy weapons and defensive shields. The Vigilant Watch was different. Its weapons seemed designed to fight something much larger and more resilient. Its sensors were built to detect things that might not exist in normal space-time. Captain Elena Torres welcomed them aboard. She was a compact woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Like every human Zexithara had met, she was polite and professional. Unlike the others, she made no attempt to hide the fact that she was constantly alert, constantly ready for something to go wrong. "Ambassador, I hope you'll find this patrol educational," Captain Torres said. "Though I have to warn you, if we encounter anything unusual, you'll need to follow our emergency protocols exactly. No exceptions." "What kind of unusual activity might we encounter in an empty star system?" Zexithara asked. Captain Torres and Director Chen exchanged one of their meaningful looks. The kind that shouldn't exist but sometimes does anyway, Captain Torres replied. The Vigilant Watch left New Geneva's orbit with an escort of 6 smaller vessels. As they traveled through hyperspace, Zexithara observed the crew at work. They moved with military precision, but there was something else in their behavior. They worked with the intensity of people who knew that mistakes could have consequences beyond their own survival. The navigation officer constantly cross-referenced their position with multiple independent systems. The sensor operator ran continuous sweeps for anomalies that weren't clearly defined in any manual she could access. The weapons officer kept all systems at ready status, even though they were traveling through supposedly empty space. Captain Torres, Zexithara said, your crew seems very vigilant for a routine patrol. There's no such thing as a routine patrol, Ambassador, Captain Torres replied. Every time we leave port, we're potentially the first line of defense for everything we care about. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. It was a typical star system with several rocky planets and a few gas giants. According to galactic surveys, it had never supported life and held no strategic value. But the moment they arrived, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Contact, the sensor operator called out. Multiple unknowns in the asteroid belt. They're not showing up on normal sensors, but gravitational distortion indicates massive objects. Captain Torres was out of her command chair instantly. Battle stations. All ships. Assume defensive formation Delta 7. Ambassador, please move to the protected observation area immediately. Zexithara hurried to where Director Chen was waiting for her. The observation area had reinforced walls and independent life support, clearly designed to protect non-combatants during dangerous operations. Through the armored view screen, she could see the human ships moving into a complex formation that seemed designed to create overlapping fields of fire while maintaining escape routes. Their weapons were charging, but she noticed they weren't targeting any specific location. They were preparing to fire at things they couldn't see yet. There. The sensor operator's voice came through the communication system. Visual contact. The main view screen shifted to show a section of the asteroid belt. At first, Zexithara saw nothing unusual. Then something moved, and her understanding of reality lurched sideways. The objects weren't ships in any sense she could understand. They were massive, organic-looking structures that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. They moved through the asteroid belt like living things, but their size was impossible. Each one was larger than a moon. Their surfaces rippled, with patterns that hurt to look at directly, and they seemed to bend light around them in ways that made her eyes water. Devourers, Director Chen said quietly. Scout class, probably. Only 3 of them. Only? Zexithara whispered. We've seen swarms of hundreds. Captain Torres's voice came through the comm. All ships weapons free. Target the larger constructs first. The human weapons opened fire, and Zexithara saw why their military technology was so different from other species. The energy beams that lanced out from the human ships weren't normal plasma or laser fire. They seemed to tear holes in space itself, creating zones where the laws of physics operated differently. The devourers responded to the attack, and Zexithara watched in horror as they began to change reality around them. Asteroids started flowing, like liquid while remaining solid rock. Space itself rippled like water. One of the smaller human escort ships suddenly found itself moving backward through time, its hull aging decades in seconds before the effect was countered by some kind of temporal stabilizer. Maintaining formation, Captain Torres ordered with calm professionalism. Continue firing pattern alpha. Watch for reality distortion fields. The battle lasted only minutes, but to Zexithara, it felt like hours. The human ships fought with practiced coordination, using weapons and tactics that shouldn't have been possible. They created zones of stable spacetime to protect themselves from the devourers' reality-warping attacks. They fired projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They used some kind of technology that made their ships temporarily immune to physical laws. When it was over, the 3 devourer constructs were gone. Not destroyed in any conventional sense, but simply absent, as if they had been edited out of reality. All ships report, Captain Torres ordered. Minor hull damage to escort vessel Defiant Hope, came one reply. Temporal shielding overloaded on escort vessel New Dawn, but all systems functional, came another. No casualties, minimal damage, Captain Torres announced. Standard post-engagement protocols, full sensor sweep for additional contacts. Zexathera realized she was shaking. What were those things? She asked Director Chen. Scouts, Director Chen replied. They show up in systems like this sometimes, empty places where they can observe without being noticed by most civilizations. We've been tracking them for decades, cleaning them out whenever we find them. But what are they? Where do they come from? We're not entirely certain. Our best theory is that they're from a reality adjacent to ours where the physical laws work differently. They seem to be explorers of a sort. They study civilizations, learning about them, mapping them. For what purpose? Director Chen's expression grew darker. We think they're preparing for something bigger. The Scouts catalog inhabited worlds, assess defensive capabilities, identify the most advanced civilizations, and then sometimes the real devourers come. Captain Torres joined them in the observation area. Ambassador, what you saw today is why humans maintain constant patrols. Those scouts have been appearing in uninhabited systems throughout this sector for the past 50 years. If we didn't intercept them, they would eventually move to inhabited systems to conduct their observations. Are you saying these creatures are studying the galactic community? Not just studying, Captain Torres replied. Hunting. They're drawn to advanced civilizations, particularly ones that have achieved faster-than-light travel and energy manipulation. The more sophisticated a society becomes, the more attractive it becomes to them. Zexathera felt pieces of a terrible puzzle clicking into place. That's why you don't want other species to know about them. If knowledge of their existence spreads, it might draw their attention to those species. Exactly, Director Chen said. Most of the galactic community is still developing their technology, still exploring space, still optimistic about the universe. If they knew what was really out there, they might try to prepare for it, and that preparation would make them visible to the devourers. But surely the Galactic Council should know. Should know what? Captain Torres interrupted. That there are entities out there that can rewrite the laws of physics, that they're attracted to exactly the kind of technological progress the galaxy is celebrating, that they destroyed our homeworld and killed 5 billion humans. Captain Torres walked to the view screen, looking out at the asteroid belt where the battle had taken place. Ambassador, what do you think would happen if we announced to the galaxy that advanced civilizations are being hunted by reality-warping entities? How many species would panic? How many would try to build weapons to defend themselves? How many would end up making themselves targets through their own preparations? Zexathera realized the horrible logic of the humans' position. They had encountered an enemy that was attracted to the very things that made civilizations worth protecting. Knowledge of that enemy could doom the species they were trying to save. So you patrol in secret, she said. You intercept the scouts before they can study other species. You keep the galaxy ignorant so the galaxy can stay safe. We do what needs to be done, Captain Torres said simply. We lost our homeworld learning about this threat. We've spent 3 centuries developing the technology and tactics needed to fight it. And we've made the choice to bear that burden alone, rather than risk exposing others to the same danger. The journey back to New Geneva was quiet. Zexathera spent most of it trying to process what she had witnessed. The humans weren't just an over-militarized species. They were the galaxy's secret guardians, standing watch against a threat that most civilizations couldn't even imagine. But the implications were staggering. If the humans were right, if these devourers were really hunting advanced civilizations, then the entire galactic community was living on borrowed time. Every technological advancement, every step toward greater unity and cooperation, was potentially drawing the attention of entities that could unmake reality itself. When they returned to New Geneva, Zexathera went straight to her quarters and began composing a report to the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. Then she stopped, her hands hovering over the communication interface. What could she say? That humans were protecting the galaxy from an enemy so dangerous that even knowledge of it posed a threat? that the peaceful expansion of galactic civilization might be dooming every species involved? She deleted the draft and started again, then deleted that one too. For the first time in her diplomatic career, Zexithara found herself in possession of knowledge that she couldn't safely share with anyone. She was beginning to understand the burden that humans carried, and the terrible isolation that came with being the only ones who knew the truth. Outside her window, the lights of New Geneva glowed peacefully in the darkness. But now she knew that the peace was maintained by people who fought battles that could never be acknowledged, who sacrificed their own innocence to preserve everyone else's. The question that haunted her was simple. What right did she have to make that choice for the rest of the galaxy? Zexithara had not slept well since witnessing the battle with the devourer scouts. 3 days had passed, and she found herself constantly looking up at the sky, wondering what else might be lurking in the darkness between stars. The humans continued their daily routines with the same calm efficiency she had observed since her arrival. But now she understood the weight behind their constant vigilance. She had requested access to the restricted galactic archives, using her diplomatic credentials, to dig deeper into historical records that most species never saw. What she found disturbed her more than the battle itself. The archives contained references to dozens of civilizations that had simply vanished over the past millennium. Species that had achieved advanced technology, begun expanding across star systems, and then gone silent without explanation. The official records listed various causes: civil wars, natural disasters, plague, technological catastrophes. But now Zexithara saw a different pattern. Each vanished civilization had reached approximately the same level of technological development. Each had been exploring faster than light travel and energy manipulation. Each had been in the process of expanding their influence across multiple star systems, and each had disappeared completely, leaving behind only dead worlds and mysterious ruins that defied analysis. She brought her findings to Director Chen during their daily briefing session. "You've been researching the archive records, Director," Chen observed, reviewing Zexithara's data compilation. It wasn't a question. 47 advanced civilizations have vanished in the past 1,000 years, Zexithara said, all of them at roughly the same technological level, all of them during periods of rapid expansion and development. Director Chen nodded slowly. "We've identified 63, but some of the records are incomplete. The pattern becomes more obvious once you know what to look for. Were all of them destroyed by the devourers? Not all. Some were probably victims of natural disasters or internal conflicts. But the majority?" Director Chen gestured to the data display. "Yes, we believe they encountered what we encountered." Zexithara studied the timeline more carefully. "But the disappearances have become less frequent in recent decades. The last confirmed case was 80 years ago. That's not a coincidence, Ambassador. 80 years ago was when humans first began systematic patrols of uninhabited systems. When we started, intercepting the scout incursions before they could complete their reconnaissance. The implication hit Zexithara like a physical blow. You've been preventing these disappearances. For 80 years you've been stopping civilizations from being discovered by the devourers." "We've been trying to," Director Chen corrected. "It's not a perfect system. We can't patrol every system, can't intercept every scout. But we've managed to reduce the frequency of major incursions significantly." "How many humans are involved in this operation?" Director Chen was quiet for a long moment. "All of them, Ambassador. Every human settlement, every colony world, every research station and mining outpost. We're all part of the early warning network. We all contribute to the patrol schedules. We all train for the possibility that we might be the first to encounter a major incursion." Zexithara thought about the human children she had seen, carrying defensive equipment and training with weapons from an early age. Even the children, especially the children, they're the ones who will inherit this responsibility when we're gone. They need to understand what they're protecting and why it matters. That evening, Director Chen took Zexithara to a different part of the city, to a facility she hadn't seen before. The building was unremarkable from the outside, but the security measures rivaled anything she had encountered in high-level government installations. "This is our coordination center," Director Chen explained as they passed through multiple checkpoints. From here, we monitor patrol reports from across human space and coordinate responses to potential threats. The main operations room was vast, filled with holographic displays showing star maps, patrol routes, and sensor readings from hundreds of human outposts. Dozens of operators worked at control stations, tracking ship movements and analyzing data streams that came in from across the galaxy. We currently have over 2,000 vessels on patrol, Director Chen said, indicating a three-dimensional display that showed the positions of human ships throughout the sector. Each one equipped with the specialized sensors needed to detect devourer activities and the weapons needed to engage if necessary. 2,000 ships, Zexthera repeated. That's larger than most species' entire military forces. It has to be. The devourers don't operate on the same scale as normal military conflicts. They don't have a home base we can attack or a fleet we can defeat. They appear randomly across vast areas of space, and we never know where the next incursion will occur. Young human officer approached them. Director Chen, we're receiving priority reports from 3 separate patrol groups. Possible scout activity in the Vega, Altair, and Proxima Centauri regions. Director Chen's expression became focused and intense. Simultaneous contacts? That's unusual. What's the assessment? All 3 report similar signatures, gravitational anomalies consistent with devourer scouts, but no visual confirmation yet. Dispatch. Reinforcement squadrons to all 3 locations. If they're coordinating multiple reconnaissance missions, we need to assume they're planning something larger. Zexthera watched as the operations center shifted into higher alert status. Additional displays activated, showing detailed tactical information about the 3 potential contact zones. Ships began moving on the strategic display as human forces repositioned to respond to the threats. Does this happen often? She asked. More often than we'd like, Director Chen replied. But coordinated incursions across multiple systems are rare. It usually means they're preparing for a major operation. Over the following hours, Zexthera observed human crisis management in action. The 3 patrol groups confirmed contact with devourer scouts, engaged them successfully, and reported no casualties. But the coordination center remained at high alert. Why are you still concerned if the threats have been eliminated? Zexthera asked. Captain Torres, who had arrived to assist with the coordination efforts, answered her question. Because coordinated scout missions like this are usually followed by something bigger. The scouts aren't just gathering information for themselves. They're preparing the way for harvester fleets. Harvester fleets? The next level up from scouts, Captain Torres explained grimly. Where scouts observe and assess, harvesters consume. They're the ones that actually destroy civilizations. Director Chen pulled up historical records on the main display. The last harvester fleet we encountered was 37 years ago. It consisted of over 200 devourer constructs, each one capable of consuming an entire planet. It took our combined forces 6 months to destroy them, and we lost 43 ships in the process. But if you won, we won that battle, Captain Torres corrected. But harvester fleets can appear anywhere at any time. We've encountered 7 of them since Earth was destroyed. Each time we've managed to stop them before they could reach inhabited systems, but each time it becomes more difficult. Why? More difficult? Because they learn from each encounter, Director Chen said. They adapt their tactics, develop new capabilities, find ways around our defenses. We have to constantly innovate our own technology just to stay ahead of them. A new alert sounded throughout the operations center. An operator called out, "Long range." Sensors are detecting massive gravitational distortions in the Tau Ceti system. Signature consistent with harvester fleet emergence. The entire room fell silent. Zexthera could feel the tension ratchet up several levels as everyone focused on the incoming data. Size assessment? Director Chen asked quietly. Still calculating, but preliminary readings suggest at least 300 constructs. Possibly more. Captain Torres moved to a command station and began issuing orders. All available ships prepare for emergency deployment to Tau Ceti system. Implement Omega-level threat protocols. Contact all human colonies and outposts. We need every capable vessel for this one. What about the inhabited systems in that region? Zexthera asked. Are there species that need to be evacuated? Taetti has 2 inhabited planets, Director Chen said, consulting the tactical display. The Keth Mori have a research colony on Taetti Prime, and there's a mixed species trading outpost on Taetti 5. Combined population of approximately 50,000. We need to warn them, Zexathara said. We can't, Captain Torres replied. Any warning we send would reveal the existence of the devourers, and if the Keth Mori or the other species try to defend themselves with conventional weapons, they'll only make themselves more visible to the harvesters. So you're going to let them face this threat without any knowledge of what they're dealing with? We're going to stop the threat before it reaches them, Director Chen said firmly. That's what we always do. That's what we have to do. Over the next hour, Zexathara watched as human military forces mobilized for what appeared to be the largest operation she had witnessed. Ships converged from across human space, forming a fleet that would dwarf most interstellar conflicts in galactic history. The scale of the response, as there are civilizations worth protecting and we have the strength to protect them. But the cost is everything we have, Director Chen replied. Our homeworld, our peace, our innocence, our right to live normal lives. We've sacrificed all of that so that other species can continue to explore, to grow, to dream about the future without fear. And if you fail, if one of these harvester fleets gets through, then another species learns what we learned. Another civilization loses everything we lost. And maybe, if they're strong enough and lucky enough, they'll take up the burden of protecting everyone else. As the human fleet departed for Taetti, Zexathara realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. An entire species had voluntarily taken on the role of silent guardians, sacrificing their own well-being to protect civilizations that didn't even know they needed protection. The question that haunted her was whether the rest of the galaxy had the right to remain ignorant of the price being paid for their safety. The battle for Taetti lasted 3 weeks. Zexathara monitored the reports from the operations center on New Geneva, watching as human forces engaged the largest devourer harvester fleet encountered in decades. The cost was staggering. 78 human ships were lost, along with over 12,000 personnel. But they succeeded. The Keth Mori research colony and the trading outpost never knew they had been in danger. When the surviving ships returned, Zexathara attended the memorial service for the fallen. She watched as Director Chen read names from a list that seemed to go on forever. Mothers, fathers, children barely old enough to serve in the human fleet. All of them had died protecting species that would never know their sacrifice. After the service, Director Chen found Zexathara sitting alone in the diplomatic quarters garden. You've been very quiet since the battle ended, Director Chen observed, settling onto the bench beside her. I've been thinking, Zexathara replied, about knowledge and responsibility, about the choice your species has made. What conclusions have you reached? Zexathara was quiet for a long moment, watching the city lights twinkle in the growing darkness. I think you're wrong, she said finally. Director Chen raised an eyebrow. About what? About keeping this secret from the galaxy. About bearing this burden alone. Ambassador, we've discussed this. Knowledge of the devourers would make other species targets. Would it? Zexathara interrupted. Or would it give them the chance to prepare, to help, to share the load that's destroying your people? The risk is too great. The risk of what? That other species might want to defend themselves? That they might develop technology to fight the devourers? That they might join you in standing guard? Director Chen shook her head. You don't understand the nature of this enemy. The more civilizations that know about them, the more likely they are to be discovered. The devourers are attracted to knowledge itself, to the electromagnetic patterns created by advanced thought processes focused on their existence. Then explain the Keth Mori research team on Taetti Prime, Zexathara said. They survived the battle. Some of them must have detected the unusual energy signatures, must have wondered what was happening in their system. Director Chen was quiet. In deso fact, Zexathara continued. Explain me. I've seen devourers, fought them, know they exist. According to your theory, I should have made myself a target just by learning about them, but I haven't been attacked or tracked by scouts. The situation is more complex than— No, Zexathera said firmly. I think the situation is exactly as simple as I'm suggesting. You've been so focused on protecting the galaxy from knowledge of this threat that you've never considered whether some species might be able to help you fight it. Director Chen stood up and walked to the garden's edge, looking out over the city. Even if you're right, even if some species could help us, the risk of exposing others could be managed, Zexathera finished. The same way you manage everything else. Carefully, selectively, with proper preparation and assessment. What are you suggesting? Zexathera joined Director Chen at the garden's edge. I'm suggesting that you don't have to fight this war alone anymore. I'm suggesting that the galaxy has a right to know what threatens it, and a right to choose how to respond to that threat. And I'm suggesting that you have no idea what you're asking for. A new voice spoke from behind them. Captain Torres approached. From the garden entrance, her expression serious but not unfriendly. With respect, Ambassador, Captain Torres continued. You've seen one scout engagement and observed one major battle from a protected position. You've seen the memorial services and the casualty reports. But you haven't lived with this knowledge. For decades. You haven't lost friends and family to an enemy that most of the galaxy doesn't believe exists. You're right, Zexathera acknowledged. I haven't experienced what you have. But I've experienced enough to understand what you're facing. And I've experienced enough to know that isolation is killing your people almost as surely as the devourers are. Captain Torres and Director Chen exchanged one of their meaningful looks. There's something else, Captain Torres said slowly. Something we haven't told you. We're not the only ones who know about the devourers. Zexathera felt her pulse quicken. What do you mean? Over the past 80 years, representatives from 17 different species have discovered the truth, Director Chen explained. Diplomats like yourself, military observers, researchers who asked the right questions or saw the wrong things. What happened to them? They made a choice, Captain Torres said. The same choice you're facing now. Return to their people and try to live with the knowledge they couldn't share, or join us in the work of protecting the galaxy. Join you how? Director Chen activated a holographic display that showed a star map of the galaxy. But this wasn't like the ones Zexathera had seen before. This map showed human settlements and patrol routes, but it also showed installations marked with symbols she didn't recognize. These are joint stations, Director Chen explained. Facilities operated by humans and other species working together to monitor for devourer activity. We have Veltar like yourself operating 3 deep space monitoring posts. Kethmori scientists have developed new sensor technologies that can detect dimensional incursions more effectively than our original equipment. Altarian engineers have improved our weapon designs. You have secret allies, Zexathera realized. We have partners who understand the stakes, Captain Torres corrected. Species representatives who chose to share the burden rather than live in ignorance. But their own people don't know. That's the choice each individual makes, Director Chen said. Some have convinced their governments to participate in limited ways without full disclosure. Others work alone, feeding information back to us, while maintaining their official positions. A few have brought their entire species into the alliance, though that's rare. Zexathera studied the map more carefully. The joint installations were positioned throughout galactic space, creating a monitoring network far more extensive than anything purely human operations could have achieved. How do you keep this secret, with so many species involved? The same way we keep everything else secret, Captain Torres replied. Very carefully, with extensive security protocols and compartmentalized information. Most of our allies know only what they need to know for their specific roles. And what would my role be if I chose to join you? Director Chen and Captain Torres looked at each other again, conducting one of their silent conversations. Finally, Director Chen spoke. The Galactic Diplomatic Corps has influence with dozens of species, she said. More importantly, you have access to information networks that could help us identify civilizations approaching the technological level that attracts devourer attention. You could help us prioritize our protection efforts. And the price? The price is that you can never go back to believing the galaxy is safe. Captain Torres said quietly. The price is that you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that peace is maintained by constant vigilance and sacrifice. The price is that you'll watch your fellow diplomats celebrate galactic cooperation while knowing that they're only able to do so because people are dying in secret to protect them. Zexathara walked to the center of the garden and sat down on the grass, looking up at the stars. She could see the running lights of human patrol ships moving across the sky, heading out on missions that would never be acknowledged by the civilizations they protected. If I choose to join you, she said, what happens to my diplomatic mission? What happens to my report to the Galactic Corps? You complete your mission normally, Director Chen replied. You file a report describing humans as a peaceful but well-prepared species that takes security seriously due to historical trauma. You recommend continued integration and cooperation. Nothing you write will be untrue. It just won't be the complete truth. The complete truth would doom civilizations that aren't ready to handle it, Captain Torres said. Sometimes protecting people means protecting them from knowledge they can't safely use. Zexathara considered her options. She could return to her old life, file her report, and continue her diplomatic career knowing what she knew but unable to share it. She could try to convince the Galactic Council to take action against a threat they wouldn't understand, potentially exposing countless species to danger they weren't prepared to face. Or she could join the humans and their allies in their secret war. There's a fourth option, she said finally. What's that? Director Chen asked. I could help you find a better way. A way to gradually prepare the galaxy for the truth without exposing everyone to immediate danger. A way to build the alliance openly instead of hiding it. Captain Torres shook her head. We've considered that approach. The risks of the current approach are also significant, Zexathara interrupted. You're burning yourselves out trying to protect everyone alone. Your people are dying in numbers that aren't sustainable long-term, and you're denying the galaxy the chance to develop defenses that could make everyone safer. She stood up and walked back to where the two humans waited. I'll join you, she said, but not just as an intelligence asset or a diplomatic contact. I want to help you find a way to do this better, a way that doesn't require humanity to sacrifice everything. While everyone else lives in ignorance, Director Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Welcome to the Alliance, Ambassador. I hope you're right about finding a better way. As Zexathara clasped the human's hand, she felt the weight of knowledge settling on her shoulders, like a heavy cloak. But she also felt something else, the relief that came from no longer carrying a burden alone. Above them, the stars continued their ancient dance, beautiful and mysterious and dangerous. But now Zexathara knew that between those stars and the civilizations they illuminated, people stood guard. Human and Veltar and Kethmori and others, united by knowledge and purpose and the shared commitment to protect what mattered most. The war against the devourers would continue. The sacrifices would continue, but perhaps with enough patience and wisdom and cooperation, they could find a way for the galaxy to stand together against the darkness instead of depending on a few species to hold the line alone. It would not be easy. It would not be quick. But for the first time since learning the truth, Zexathara felt hope. In the distance, another patrol ship launched from New Geneva's spaceport, carrying its crew toward whatever waited in the void. But this time, Zexathara knew she would not just be watching from safety. Next time she would be standing with them, adding her strength to theirs in the endless vigil that kept the galaxy free. The choice was made, the burden was shared, and perhaps that was the beginning of something better than what came before.